Hi guys, I'm Randy with BRStv, and today we're setting up one of the highest quality skimmers for tanks under 150 gallons with the Vertex Omega 130 and Omega 150. Today we'll highlight what puts the skimmer pair in a class of their own, help you select the right one, show you a few steps to setting one up, and give you some tips on maintenance and available accessories. Vertex has long been synonymous with high-quality equipment for many years in our hobby, and the Omega line of skimmers follows in those same footsteps with well-thought-out features like precision angle-milled injection ports into the bottom of the skimmer body that are tightly sealed and allow the air-water mixture to create a visible spinning vortex inside to lessen turbulence throughout the bubble chamber, increasing overall contact time and producing a very thick foam from the very bottom of the skimmer all the way up. Along with that, Vertex uses high-grade acrylic and PVC throughout the skimmer components, which you can tell are built to last when you hold it in your hands, and are one of the only skimmer options out there with a smooth, threaded collection cup that are much easier to remove without spilling. To mitigate noise as much as possible, Vertex also added foam inserts inside of the air silencers, as well as equipped them with top-of-the-line pumps from Seche, which themselves also have a long history of reliability and quality. Finally, for those of you with more advanced goals, such as using ozone in your tank, these Vertex skimmers in their higher grade of PVC and acrylic are optimal choices and come ready out of the box with the additional injection port built in. The Omega 130 and 150 cover a wide range of the most popular tank sizes from 40 gallons all the way up to 150 gallons depending on your stocking level, and with that in mind we recommend the Omega 130 on those tank sizes from 40 to 100 gallons and the Omega 150 for tanks from 100 gallons up to 150 gallons. Both of the Omega 130 and 150 are very easy to assemble, which we'll cover next, but here's what you can expect when you open the box of your skimmer. Each one comes with a wedge standpipe adjustment with etched settings for 0, 50, and 100%, as well as a screw to hold your settings in place. One unique feature of the Vertex wedge pipe adjustments is that they reduce the diameter of the outlet pipe right at the skimmer body to properly restrict the flow exiting the skimmer, which allows for a larger diameter riser pipe, and related to that, easier and smaller incremental adjustments to the skimmer performance. Along with that, you'll see the threaded collection cup with the angled drain port, an air silencer with foam inserts, a venturi that has ports for the included silicone airline tubing and optional ozone input, as well as an optional air intake adjustment that you can install on the airline. As I mentioned, there really isn't much needed to do as far as assembling the Vertex Omega skimmers outside of adding on a couple of parts and connecting the airline. Since the 130 and 150 skimmers have the pumps on the outside of the body, you'll need to thread the pump onto the skimmer body input, which should only be tight enough to start squeezing the rubber O-ring to create a proper seal. All that's left to add on is the venturi and air tubing, install the silencer and connect the airline tube, then screw on the collection cup and drop it in the sump. There are a couple of considerations to take into account when physically installing your Omega skimmer, which include the footprint of the skimmer for proper fit in your sump, as well as the amount of water the skimmer sits in for operation. Starting with the measurements of each, the 130 will need a footprint of at least 8.5 inches by 11.5 inches and stands right at 20 inches tall, while the Omega 150 requires a skimmer chamber of at least 9 inches by 12 inches and stands 22 inches tall. Moving on to skimmer operating depth, for best results, Vertex recommends the Omega 130 and 150 to be operated within the range of 6.5 to 9.5 inches. I find that starting somewhere in the middle of those recommendations to work best when first getting the skimmer tuned in which case I'll be placing this Omega 150 in 7.5 inches of water. The main key here to remember when setting your skimmer operating depth is that stability is the key for consistent operation, and you'll want to make sure you install it in a chamber that has very little to no fluctuations in water level as possible, which will also keep you from having to constantly make adjustments. That in mind, if your water level in the sump is too high, you can either drain some water from the tank or use a skimmer stand to raise it up out of the water. Opposite of that, if your water level in the skimmer chamber is too low, you can add more water to the entire system, or if your sump is equipped with an adjustable baffle, you can also raise it to your desired level. Tuning these Omega skimmers is pretty easy and typically only requires a couple of adjustments to dial them in. One thing to note here before we get started, as with nearly all skimmers, there will be a break-in period where the skimmer may not seem like it's pulling that dark, thick skimmate that it should, which may be due to some manufacturing oils or chemicals left on the skimmer parts, but typically after 1 or 2 weeks it will level out and start functioning normally. To help lessen the break-in period, Vertex suggests using a clean cloth with some RO or RODI water and clean the surfaces of the skimmer and the skimmer parts inside and out. Adjusting your skimmer is really only a two-step process where you can adjust the operating depth, which we've already done, and adjust the air and water mixture inside the body by opening and closing the wedge pipe. If you opted to use the optional air intake valve, you could also make adjustments to it, which will increase or decrease the amount of air and water mixture inside the body. The max amount of air may not always be best, so you can play around with this setting until you find the best mixture for your setup. At a setting of 0 on the wedge pipe, there is very little water allowed out of the skimmer body, and the water level inside will be at its highest point, while at a 100% setting, the most amount of water can flow out of the skimmer body, meaning that the water level inside will be at its lowest. I usually start at 100% open and make small adjustments until the foam head inside the skimmer body begins to break the surface just below where the collection cup and the skimmer body meet. From there, I can periodically check back to see if it's filling up the cup too fast or not at all, and adjust accordingly. Just keep in mind that adjustments could take a little while for them to settle, so if you do make any changes, it's best to leave them for 10 or 15 minutes before making more. One last thing to remember, nearly all skimmers will naturally fluctuate in skimmate production, where they seem to be removing quite a bit of organics, while at other times they may seem like they're not removing much at all. This is usually a direct cause of the overall availability of dissolved organics within the water column, where if there aren't much organics to remove at one time, the skimmer won't produce thick and dark skimmate. To some, skimmers may be one of the easier pieces of equipment to maintain on their tank, as you only need to occasionally remove the skimmer cup to empty it when it becomes full, or conduct a little more robust maintenance by removing the entire skimmer from the tank a couple of times a year for a deep cleaning. Either way, cleaning the collection cup is very easy by unscrewing it and dumping the skimmate down the drain. Here you'll see that the threaded cup makes it much easier to remove without spilling the contents back into the tank. Outside of that, for longer term maintenance, it's best to deep clean the entire skimmer a couple of times a year, or you can put the full pump and body into a tub or bucket of citric acid and water solution or vinegar and water and let it run for a few hours to break up that heavy buildup. Further than that, you may want to disassemble the whole thing, including removing the volute and impeller from the pump to brush and clean all the surfaces. If you're looking to accessorize your Omega, there are a couple of options available, such as the Vertex Vectra engine neck cleaner, which will fit the 150 and help to maintain a more efficient skim by keeping the neck clean and smooth, which means less resistance on the skimmate to bubble up and over into the cup. On top of that, if you want to extend the amount of time between cleaning your collection cup as well as keeping any skimmer odors out of your home, you can add on a skimmate locker like these Davy Jones lockers from Avast Marine in either medium or large sizes that can hold just under a gallon or up to 1.5 gallons. These skimmate collectors are very handy and include a carbon chamber to remove odors, as well as a pressure sensor that senses when the container is full and shuts the power off to the skimmer without the use of any moving parts like a float switch. Thanks for watching, and if you have any more questions that we didn't answer here, feel free to give us a call, send us an email, or hop on a chat. See you next time on BRS TV.